Well, ahoy mateys, we're jumping into 5.3, which is the properties of addition and multiplication. You'll want to take notes. Definitely take notes. So most of this is stuff you've learned, but you haven't learned the names for these things necessarily, which is why notes are so important, because you're probably going to forget what associative, commutative, and all those properties are. So take notes. Okay, we're going to start with equivalent expressions. So anytime you have two expressions that are the same, so like their example here is 5 plus 8 is the same as 8 plus 5, or 5 times 8 is the same as 8 times 5. Those are equivalent expressions. They're the same answer either way. And what I just illustrated there, and what they illustrate right here, that is the commutative property. So what the commutative property says is, for addition, the commutative property of addition is it doesn't matter which way you order numbers when you add them. So like 5 plus 8 is 13, 8 plus 5 is 13. That's the commutative property of addition. 5 times 8 is 40. 8 times 5 is 40. Doesn't matter how you multiply them. That's the commutative property of multiplication. Notice there is no commutative property for subtraction or division, okay? Because when you subtract numbers and you switch them around, that's not the same answer. And when you divide and you switch the numbers around, it's not the same answer. So there's a commutative property for adding and for multiplying. Algebraically, it looks like this. It's saying that A plus B is the same as B plus A. Okay, that's the algebraic way of the commutative property. It's saying it doesn't matter which number you add first, you get the same answer. All right, so a way to remember that is I commute to work every morning. It means I go from here to there and there to here. And the distance from my house to work is the same as it is from work to my house. So the order doesn't matter. It's the same answer. Now, associative property is when you have grouping of adding or multiplying. So if I'm doing 7 plus 4 plus 2, I can add the 7 and 4 together first, and then the 2. Or I can add the 4 and the 2 together first, and then the 7. I still get the same answer. Okay, that's the associative property of addition. So this one usually has parentheses in it, and it's with 3 numbers or more where you're grouping them differently. So notice the order didn't change. The 7 and the 4 and the 2 here are in the same order. It's just the order that you add them in is different. And that is also true for multiplication. If you're multiplying 3 numbers, it doesn't matter if you multiply the first 2 numbers together first and then the last one, or if you multiply the second 2 numbers and then the first one, you'll still get the same answer. And algebraically, that looks like this. All right, so now's a great time to add all this to your notes. I'll stop talking for a brief second. Okay, second's over. Now we're going to apply what you just took notes on here to simplify this expression. So the first thing you want to do is, instead of doing 12 plus x first, because you can't, you don't know what x is, we want to do 7 plus 12 first. So which property allows us to add those first 2 numbers instead of the last 2 numbers? Yeah, if you said the associative property, you're correct. So for that first one, you can rewrite this by moving the parentheses over using the associative property of addition. And it becomes 7 plus 12 first, which is 19 plus x. So to simplify this, use the associative property of addition to regroup the parentheses. Then you can add the 7 and 12 to get your simplified version. All right, for the second one, if I simply move these parentheses to here, I'm still trying to add x to 8.4. So the first thing you actually want to do is switch this x and the 6.1 around. What property says it's okay to switch 2 numbers around when you're adding? Yeah, the commutative property of addition says it's okay to rewrite this 6.1 plus x as x plus 6.1. Okay, now you've gotten this point to here. So now, how do you move these parentheses so that you're not adding the x to the 6.1 first? Yeah, that's the associative property of addition. Says you can now move these parentheses over to here, and then you can add those numbers, which is 14.5, to simplify to x plus 14.5. I know this is a lot going on right now, but the more you practice this, especially if you have notes, the easier it'll get. So for this last one here, we got 5 times 11 times y. And we're going to move these parentheses so that we're actually multiplying the 5 times 11 first instead of the 11 times y first. So what property says it's okay to move these parentheses and multiply 5 times 11 first? Yeah, that one's the associative property of multiplication because you're multiplying. So you can move these parentheses, so you do 5 times 11 first, which is 55. So it's 55y when you simplify that. All right, so those are actually the tougher properties that you're going to learn in 5.3. There are some other ones that are also important properties, but they're way easier. Here we go. This is the addition property of 0, also known as the, of course, property of 0. When you add 0 to any number, you still get that same number. For their example here, 7 plus 0 is still 7. Mind-blowing, I know. That's called the addition property of 0. When you add 0 to a number, the number doesn't change. Okay, there's also a multiplication property of 0. When you multiply by 0, you now get 0. But if you multiply by 1, the number doesn't change. Okay, so these are the properties of 0 and a property of multiplication of 1. And there you go. Take notes on that. These are very obvious. You've used them your whole math life, but these are what the properties are called. Okay, now we're going to use those properties to answer a couple of questions here. So this expression, 9 times 0 times p, what property says that that whole thing becomes 0? Yeah, that is the multiplication property of 0. Here they're rearranging things. So they're using the associative property first. You don't have to because you're multiplying by 0, and anything times 0 is 0. So the multiplication property of 0 makes that whole thing equal 0. All right, this one, though, we will have to do a little rearranging first. So we have 4.5 times r times 1. What property says it's okay to switch this r and this 1 around? Yeah, that one's the commutative property of multiplication. Oh, they're rearranging. This is another way to do this. There are many ways to do this. What I would have done is the commutative property to put 4.5 times 1 times r, and then the multiplication property of 1 to get 4.5 times r. So I just won't add that question into the Edpuzzle. We'll just keep that out. So there are more than one way to simplify some of these with the properties, but this one you multiply by 1, multiplication property of 1 gives you 4.5r. All right, and the last thing is to go over some real-life problems. So you and 6 friends play on a basketball team. A sponsor paid $100 for the league fee, X dollars for each player's shirt, and $68.25 for basketballs. Write an expression that represents the total amount the sponsor paid. Then find the total amount paid when each t-shirt costs $14.50. That's a whole lot. I'll let you read it over and digest it. All right, now your first question is, how many people are on this basketball team? Ooh, kind of a trick question. It's you and 6 friends, so there are 7 people on this basketball team. There's 7 people. So let's go through how they wrote this expression, because you will be writing some expressions. So here we go. So we have the league fee plus the amount of shirts times the cost per shirt plus the cost of the basketballs is the total amount that they paid. So here, the league fee was $100. There are 7 shirts because it's you and 6 friends. Each shirt was X dollars. We don't know what that is. And the cost of the basketballs was $68.25. So this is the expression. I think they'll write it out a little nicer. There it is. That's the expression for the amount of money. Okay, so now what I want you to do is take this expression, use some paper, maybe even a calculator is okay on this problem, and evaluate this when X is 14.5. Okay, let's see how you did. So you can rearrange this by using the commutative property of addition. That says that you can rearrange these numbers, switch them around. And then the 100 plus the 68.25 is 168.25. So it's 7x plus 168.25. So this is actually an easier expression to get the answer. Multiply 7 by 14.5 and add 168.25, and you end up getting $269.75. So you'll have, that's about as complicated as you're going to see when you're working through 5.3. Anyway, I'm going to cut this video off. Now, if you have any questions while you're working on these problems, make sure to let me know. Good luck, and I will see you in class. Arr!